I baked a cake to apologize for what you said about me. That's the first thing she said when she walked through the door. I was on the couch, laptop open, spreadsheets untouched, my eyes burning holes into the paused frame of the security footage I wasn't supposed to have. Madeline kicked off her heels like she hadn't just detonated my entire world 12 hours earlier. What flavor? I asked, without looking up. Chocolate rum. The one you like. I know you're mad, but come on, babe. I was tipsy. Briggs was just being playful. You really shouldn't have made a scene. A scene? She was talking about the part where I confronted her coworker, the one who whispered in her ear while touching the small of her back during her company's New Year kickoff party. The one who smirked when I walked up and said, "Is this guy bothering you?" Like an idiot in a bad rom-com. Except the smile he gave me didn't belong in a rom-com. It belonged in a prison yard. You're the spreadsheet guy, right? Briggs said, shaking my hand like it owed him money. Madeline said you're great at pivot tables. I don't remember the next 5 seconds. I only remember her laughing. Not nervous. Not uncomfortable. Genuinely laughing. At me. So no, I wasn't mad about the flirting. Or the touch. Or the drink he bought her that she accepted without hesitation. I was mad because she joined the punchline. And I was done being the joke. So while she sat in the kitchen icing a cake she hoped would make me forget, I copied the final file onto my flash drive. The one labeled December_event_CM2_backup. The file that showed what happened after I left the party early. The file that showed my wife, alone on a rooftop bar with a man who called me Terry the typist. She didn't know I had it yet. But soon, Briggs wouldn't be the only one who had no idea what was coming. Madeline didn't notice the flash drive. She never really noticed my hands unless they were holding grocery bags or a vacuum. That night, they were holding the key to something I never wanted to need, proof. Not suspicions, not gut feelings. Proof. Hard, sharp, gut-stabbing proof that everything I feared was not just real, but worse than imagined. I copied the file from my private security backup, not the main house cams, but the one I installed last fall above the garage after I noticed her coming home late from team outings. She laughed when she found it back then. Paranoid much? She said. Maybe. But now? Now that camera was the only honest thing left in my house. She was in the kitchen humming. After what happened last night. After I saw her let Briggs light her cigarette. After I watched her lean on the balcony railing next to him, brushing his arm, not pulling away when he put his hand on her lower back. Then, God help me, she smiled. It wasn't flirty. It wasn't shy. It was intimate. The kind of smile she used to give me when we were broke and happy, eating takeout on the floor of our first apartment. The cake knife scraped loudly against the metal tray. She was cutting me a slice. Peace offering. Band-aid over an axe wound. I'm not hungry, I said, walking past her toward the hallway. Suit yourself, she replied without turning, like this was just another moody evening in our married life. I didn't slam the door to my home office, but I wanted to. I closed it gently, like a man preparing for war with someone he still loves, against every reason not to. I opened the video again, this time with the volume up. Briggs had a voice like radio static and whiskey, slurred and smug. Your guy's not a threat, you know. He's like background music, white noise. Then there was silence, and then her voice, quiet, breathy, and utterly devoid of guilt. Don't talk about him like that, she said. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, she was defending me. Then came the part that broke me. I just need time, she whispered. Time? Time for what? Time to leave me? Time to build the next chapter with the man who grinned at me across the dinner table every time we had those cursed friends from work over? I hit pause. Her voice echoed in the room even after the video stopped. I just need time. I stared at the screen like it might blink first. The reflection in the black monitor showed a man I didn't recognize anymore. Not because he was broken, but because he was awake now. I wasn't going to fight Briggs. I wasn't going to scream at her. I wasn't going to cry or beg or throw plates. No, I was going to dismantle them both from the inside, and they would never see it coming. I opened a new spreadsheet, not because I'm weak, but because vengeance, when properly calculated, becomes something undeniable. I didn't sleep that night. Not from rage, and not from sorrow either. Those were already worn thin. No, I stayed awake from something else entirely. Calculation. There's a strange kind of energy that grows in a person who has spent their whole life keeping the peace, until one day they decide peace is a lie. That night, while she slept just 2 rooms away, curled up in our bed like she hadn't promised time to another man, I stared at line after line of numbers and dates. Not just video timestamps. No, that would have been too easy. I was tracking everything. Uber receipts she forgot I could see, card charges from that steakhouse I never got invited to, the new perfume that mysteriously came with a PR package but had a receipt from Briggs Boutique Florist stapled to it. I wasn't collecting evidence. I was constructing a narrative, one that would unravel cleanly, efficiently, and publicly. She came into the room around 6 a.m., just as I was updating a tab labeled Exposure Plan, Tier 1. Her face was washed out and tired, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't have her phone in her hand. "Did you stay up all night?" she asked softly, like maybe this was the moment she'd break down and admit everything. But no, of course not. She sat on the edge of my desk, still wearing last night's remorse like an accessory. "You're being dramatic," she said. "It wasn't what it looked like. Briggs is just complicated." I stared at her, not with anger, not even disappointment, just clarity. "He touched you," I said. "You didn't pull away." She blinked at that, caught off guard by how quietly I said it. "You were drunk," she replied. "You always think the worst when you feel insecure." Ah, there it was. The oldest trick in the guilt handbook. Turn your partner's betrayal into a flaw in their perception. I didn't respond. I just looked at her like I was watching a stranger pretend to be someone I used to love. She sighed and stood up, muttering something about going to get coffee. "I'll bring you one too," she added, halfway out the door. I told her I'd make my own. And that's when it started. Not the revenge, not the confrontation, but the performance. I made her breakfast the next day. Eggs, sourdough toast. That blueberry jam she always says is too expensive, but buys anyway when she wants to feel special. She was surprised. I told her I wanted to reset things. She smiled cautiously. I kissed her forehead. I packed her lunch with a little note that said, "I'm proud of you," and I meant it. Just not for the reasons she thought. Because while she was at work, I called in a favor. An old friend, Roman, who owed me more than one. The kind of man who didn't ask questions when I said I needed a background check run on a guy named Briggs Thorne. In under 6 hours, I had a full dossier, suspended license, 2 sealed court cases involving workplace misconduct, and a business registered in his name that had 3 cease and desist letters from former employees. None of this was public, but it would be soon. And I wasn't done. That evening, Madeline came home, kissed me on the cheek, and said we were invited to a weekend retreat, team-building thing at a lake house, organized by Briggs. "He said you can come too this time," she said, as if that were a generous gesture. I smiled, told her it sounded perfect. She didn't see the glint in my eyes when I said it. She never looked close enough to notice that part of me had changed. She thought I was being kind again. But sometimes kindness is just a slow-burning fuse, and mine had just been lit. The lake house was bigger than I expected. Secluded, yes, but not in a charming way. It was the kind of place someone like Briggs would rent to feel powerful. 3 levels of glass and cedar, perched on a hill like a throne. You could tell no one lived there full-time. It was too curated. Every piece of furniture screamed rental luxury. No soul, just surface. Madeline was glowing the moment we arrived. She hadn't stopped smiling since the drive up, playing music she knew I hated and acting like this was some second honeymoon. I played along. I had to. She wore that green sweater I bought her 3 birthdays ago, the one she'd accidentally left in her office last month. I know it was her favorite. What I didn't know was that it had Briggs cologne embedded in the sleeves the last time I found it. There were 6 other people at the retreat, 2 married couples, 1 intern, and Briggs, who showed up an hour late in a Jeep that was somehow both spotless and obnoxiously muddy. When he walked in, everyone clapped like a celebrity had arrived. He grinned, threw his arms open, and said, "Let's build some synergy, people." Madeline rushed over to greet him, laughing like a schoolgirl. I watched her from across the room and wondered how long it had been since she laughed like that for me, or if she ever had. Briggs spotted me and walked over like we were teammates on some beer league team. "Terry, you made it. Brave man," he said, slapping my back hard enough to knock the breath out of me. "You ready to do some trust falls, buddy?" I smiled tight sharp. "Oh, I trust you'll fall," I replied. He laughed, too loud, like he wasn't sure if I was joking. That first night, I observed more than I participated. I helped set up dinner. I offered to take group photos. I volunteered to sleep on the couch so others could have the better rooms. I was building something in those quiet acts, not goodwill, but silence. The kind of silence that grows like a vine, wrapping around guilt until it can't breathe anymore. Madeline drank more than usual that night. They all did. The group devolved into messy laughter and clumsy games of who's most likely to. At one point, Briggs was dared to name someone he'd rescue from a burning building and someone he'd leave behind. He didn't hesitate. "I'd carry Madeline out like a princess," he said. "And Terry? Sorry, man, but you've got smoke damage written all over you." Everyone laughed, except one of the other wives, a quiet woman named Erica, who gave me a look that lingered just a second too long. Not pity. Recognition. Like she'd been in my shoes once. Madeline didn't even defend me. She threw her head back and laughed until she coughed. I didn't flinch, because earlier that afternoon, I'd taken a walk around the property, found the security system's access point in the laundry room, logged into the network through the admin port, installed my own little backdoor camera, hidden between two folded towels, facing the guest bedroom, the one I knew she would end up in eventually, just like she had before. This wasn't paranoia. This was math, and the variables were aligning perfectly. When everyone went to bed, I pretended to sleep on the couch, earbuds in, pretending to listen to a podcast. But the only thing I was listening for was her footsteps on the hardwood floors, and where they would stop. At 1:27 a.m. They stopped at his door. My hands didn't shake. I simply opened my laptop, watched the feed start buffering, and whispered to myself, "Let's see how much synergy you build in the morning." The thing about watching someone betray you on video is that it doesn't feel like pain, not immediately. It feels sterile, distant, like you're watching actors in a short film about people who vaguely resemble your life. The laughter is quieter, somehow. The touch is more mechanical. It's only after the screen goes black that it hits you, that you were never imagining it, that the people you trusted were never acting at all. At 1:27 a.m., Madeline entered Briggs' room. At 1:42 a.m., she adjusted her hair in his bathroom mirror. By 1:50 a.m., she returned to the hallway barefoot and smiling. I watched it twice, not because I needed confirmation, but because I needed control. I needed to feel something sharper than helplessness. I needed the image to burn into my mind so completely that there'd be no part of me left capable of mercy. The next morning, I made pancakes. I let her rest in. I smiled when she kissed me on the cheek like nothing happened. I even poured Briggs a cup of coffee when he came into the kitchen half-dressed, rubbing his temples like the night before had exhausted him in all the ways I feared. "Oh man," he groaned, accepting the mug. "Terry, you're too good to us." "I try," I said, and I meant it. I really tried. After breakfast, Briggs announced a team bonding hike. Everyone cheered like kids on a field trip. I packed Madeline a snack bag, gave her my windbreaker, hugged her a little too long. She looked up at me, confused, maybe even guilty. "You okay?" she asked. "You're being, I don't know, extra sweet." "Just appreciating what I've got," I said. She smiled like that made her the luckiest woman in the world. By noon, they'd all left for the trail. I stayed behind, claiming allergies and foot pain. No one argued. Once the Jeep disappeared into the trees, I got to work. Not revenge. Not yet. Just strategy. I copied the footage again. One copy on a thumb drive, one uploaded to a cloud folder under a name no one would ever open. Then I sat at the kitchen table, pulled out my notebook, and started writing. Exit plan. Phase 2. Item 1. Cancel joint credit cards before Monday. Item 2. Remove her access to the savings account. Item 3. Draft letter to her firm's HR. Anonymous, factual, timestamped. Item 4. Update lawyer on timeline. Emphasize no confrontation yet. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a transformation. The man Madeline married would have wept. He would have begged. He would have believed whatever half-hearted lie she rehearsed and accepted the scraps of affection she offered after every betrayal. But that man didn't live here anymore. This man was building a paper trail, not for drama, not for pity, but for precision. When they returned from the hike, I was sitting on the deck with a drink in my hand and music playing softly from the speaker. Her favorite playlist, the one she hadn't listened to in months. She froze a little when she saw me. Something in my posture must have unsettled her. "You good?" she asked. "Better than I've been in years," I replied. "You?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Tired." But yeah, Briggs appeared behind her, still laughing with the intern like the king of summer camp. He gave me a thumbs up and yelled, "We might turn you into an outdoorsman after all, teabag." I waved, smiled, because sometimes the only thing louder than revenge is patience. And I wasn't done waiting. The next morning was colder than the forecast had predicted. The air bit at your skin the moment you stepped outside, and the fog hadn't yet lifted from the lake's surface. I stood alone on the back deck for nearly an hour, cup of black coffee going cold in my hand, watching the mist slither over the water like a secret. I could hear laughter inside the house. Fake, forced, too early in the day for anyone to be that happy. That kind of laughter always means someone's trying to bury something. Briggs and Madeline didn't say much to each other at breakfast. Not directly, anyway. They made little glances, short looks when they thought no one noticed, but I was always watching. I think the weight of last night sat on both of them, but neither was willing to acknowledge it. Not while the house was still full of coworkers and spouses and interns who pretended not to notice the tension brewing just beneath the polished surface of this getaway. Later, I volunteered to chop firewood. Something physical, something methodical. It helped. Briggs, of course, followed me outside 10 minutes later, still carrying the damn bottle of bourbon from the night before, already a few sips in. He leaned against the railing like he owned the place, and for a moment, we stood in silence. Just two men surrounded by trees and cold air and a very specific kind of betrayal. "You're good with your hands, huh?" he finally said. His tone was trying to be casual, but there was an edge underneath it. "Bet you're the kind of guy who reads books about camping but never actually goes." I didn't look at him. I split another log, set it aside, grabbed the next one. "You're drunk," I said. He laughed. "It's 11 a.m. I'm not drunk. I'm just relaxed. That's what retreats are for, man. You should try it." Another log split. He kept going. "You know, you've got a great wife. She's smart, talented, loyal to a fault." That last part, that was the bait. He wanted me to bite, to lose my cool, to confirm what he suspected, that I knew, that I was broken. But I didn't give him that satisfaction. I turned to face him fully for the first time and gave him a polite smile. "You think I don't see it, don't you?" He blinked, caught off guard by how direct I was. "I see how you look at her," I continued. "How you talk to her. You think you're the wolf at the edge of the village. The alpha." I dropped another log on the stump. "But the thing about wolves, Briggs, they get hunted too." His expression twitched, just slightly. He smirked like he was still in control, but his knuckles tightened around the bourbon bottle. "You trying to threaten me, Terry?" he asked, leaning forward. I shook my head. "Not at all. I'm just telling you a story, one you haven't read the ending to yet." That wiped the smirk off. He walked back inside without saying another word. I finished chopping the wood, each swing cleaner than the last. I wasn't angry. I was steady, calm, dangerous in a way Briggs couldn't begin to understand, because men like him only know how to dominate loud. They've never met someone who dismantles people quietly. That night, after dinner, Madeline asked if we could go on a walk. Alone. She looked nervous, not scared, just uncertain, like she could sense the foundation beneath her feet shifting. We walked along the edge of the lake, just the two of us under a sky full of stars that didn't care about either of us. She finally spoke after a long silence. "You've been different lately." I stayed quiet. She stopped walking, turned to face me. "I need to know what's going on. If you're mad, if you know something." And there it was. Not a confession, but a fear. I met her eyes, slow and steady. "Madeline," I said, "if I was mad, you'd feel it. If I knew something, you'd be gone already." Her face went pale. She didn't ask another question, because she already knew the answers. The ride home was silent, too silent for a couple who just spent a weekend at a lakeside retreat, surrounded by laughter, campfires, and team-building games no one cared about. Madeline looked out the passenger window most of the drive, barely touching the snack bag I packed for her, only giving the occasional, mechanical hum when I asked if she needed anything. I didn't press. I knew silence was more uncomfortable for her than shouting would have been. And right now, I wanted her uncomfortable. I wanted her to feel what I had felt for months, like something was watching her from inside her own skin. When we got home, she showered immediately. Long, hot, quiet. I used the time to slip the envelope under her pillow, a thick, sealed one. Unlabeled. No threats. No explanation. Just an anonymous note and a printed photo still frame. One pulled from the bedroom feed at the lake house. I didn't include the worst moment. I chose one where she was only sitting on the edge of the bed. Innocent enough to make her question what I had. Dangerous enough to make her terrified of what I might do next. She didn't find it until midnight. I was pretending to sleep when she lifted her pillow and froze. I could feel her body tense as she held the envelope in her hands like it might explode. The room was dark except for the streetlight leaking in through the blinds. I heard the paper crackle as she opened it. I heard her breathing change when she saw what was inside. And I heard her footsteps, soft, panicked, as she slipped out of the room, thinking I hadn't noticed. She stayed in the kitchen for almost an hour. I never moved. I wanted her to think I was still asleep. I wanted her to be alone with that photo, with every possibility running wild in her head. Had I seen it all? Had I told anyone? Was I going to leave her? Expose her? Destroy her job, her name, her reputation? The next morning, she was awake before me, fully dressed. No makeup, her face drawn tight with fear and calculation. She was making coffee like it was any other Tuesday, except she didn't hum, didn't check her phone, didn't even look me in the eye when she asked if I wanted toast. I told her no. I told her I had something else I needed to do that morning. I grabbed a small black lockbox from the closet and placed it on the kitchen table. "What's that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Insurance," I said. I didn't elaborate. She stared at it like it was radioactive. She didn't touch it, didn't breathe. "Does Briggs know?" she finally asked. I looked at her for a long time. Should he? Her face crumbled for a second. Then the mask came back on. "Terry, stop," I said. Not angry, just firm. The kind of voice I never used in our marriage, the kind of voice she probably wished I had found sooner. "You don't need to lie to me. You need to listen." She nodded slowly, her eyes beginning to gloss over. "I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to post things online. I'm not going to call your firm or show up at your office. That's not how this ends. But I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to make sure that whatever comes next doesn't hurt me. Only you. And the best part is, you won't know when or how. You'll just feel it, eventually. Terry, please. You already made your choice. I'm just giving it consequences." She covered her mouth like she was going to cry, but I wasn't looking for tears anymore. Tears were for men still begging to be loved. I had no use for that now. I grabbed my coat, grabbed my phone, walked to the door. Before I left, I looked back at her one more time. "You once told me I wasn't strong enough to walk away," I said quietly. "You were right. I wasn't. Until now." Then I shut the door behind me, not knowing when, or if, I'd ever walk back in. 3 weeks passed after I walked out that morning, and not once did I look back. Not physically, not emotionally, not spiritually. I didn't check our shared bank accounts, which, by then, were no longer shared. I didn't read her long texts, the ones that started out defensive, then turned desperate, then silent. I didn't respond to the email from Briggs, the one that simply said, "We both know she made a mistake. Let's not blow it up." I didn't respond because I didn't need to. Everything that needed to be said was in motion already, and none of it required my presence. I had already spoken the loudest way I knew how, with distance, with clarity, and with the one thing neither of them ever expected from me, boundaries. The lockbox? Never opened, never needed. It sat untouched in my lawyer's office, a symbol, not a threat. My attorney told me I had more than enough to scorch the earth. But I didn't want ashes. I wanted peace. Madeline tried to apologize in the most predictable ways. Gifts, letters, voicemails where her voice cracked just enough to sound broken, but never enough to sound honest. I listened to one. Halfway through, she said, "You were too good to me. I never believed you'd leave. That's on me." She was right. And for once, I didn't need her to say it. I rented a small place across town. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom. Exposed brick. A coffee shop downstairs where the barista calls me by name. It's quiet. Peaceful. Mine. I started reading again. Cooking for myself. Running. Not from anything, but towards something I hadn't felt in years. A life where I wasn't just tolerated, but present. The people I thought were friends? Most disappeared. But the ones who stayed? They came over on Fridays with 6-packs and stories. We laughed in a way that wasn't performative. Just human. Simple. Real. Last weekend, I met someone, completely by accident. Her name's June. She's kind. Subtle. Talks more about books than brunch. When I told her I was recently separated, she didn't flinch. just smiled and said, "Good. That means you're healing. I don't know where that's going. I'm not rushing it. But I do know this." She looked me in the eye, not through me, when I spoke. And I hadn't realized how long it had been since anyone did that. Briggs? Still with the firm. Still posting pictures on LinkedIn of charity galas and tech mixers. But every time he shares one, the likes are fewer. The comments quieter. Word gets around. Not through me, but through time. Because no one keeps secrets forever. Especially not men like him. Madeline filed the divorce papers 2 days ago. No fireworks. No drama. Just a PDF in my inbox and a signature box at the bottom. I signed it while making coffee. And when I did, I smiled. Not because it was over, but because I wasn't. Because in the end, I didn't need revenge. I just needed my life back. And now, finally, it's mine.